Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the House of Kayfabe. We're taking the tickets. We're popping the popcorn. We're going to the movies this week on the House of Kayfabe. Thanks for watching. I'm Adam Harris here with the only Matt Mullins that matters, Steve, the trial chief. New. He's in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He didn't buy his ticket. Someone paid for it for him. And the junk drummer, the other Steve, is here. And man, guys, I saw the movie twice. Steve, I know the other Steve has seen it. Matt was texting me during the whole thing about his feedback immediately, and I'm anxious to talk about this with you guys. We're talking, of course, about the Iron Claw from A24. It's been out in theaters for the holiday season. Sean Durkin, the director, and of course, many famous stars, including Zac Efron in this movie. The story of the Von Erichs. Steve New, you were a fan of World Class Championship Wrestling. You were around for this time period. As the senior wrestling fan member of the House of Kayfabe, start us with what it was like to be an original fan.
Me too.
Buying your ticket to see the
Hey,
Iron
I
Claw.
get no respect up in here.
Me too. I'm the old head here too.
Hey, I'm telling you. Yeah, I was first introduced to World Class with the aftermags. Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, and Inside Wrestling. So that was my first glimpse at these boys from Texas who, seemed to be in great shape. People loved them. The after magazines couldn't put them over enough. And
they look good in those photo spreads, right?
Yeah, they sure did, and after and all those guys in those mags were always putting over the Von Erichs. They sold magazines, and then my uncle had one of the big West Virginia Wildflower satellite dishes, and he would record World Class for me on VHS tape and bring me, a grocery bag of those every so often. And then, as Steve Barker knows and can attest to, World Class Championship Wrestling breaks away from the NWA and establishes its own world champion, just like Joe Blanchard did in San Antonio, with Adrian Adonis having Lou Thesz's belt. And, they come out from under the umbrella of the NWA. They have their own world champion, and they get a deal with ESPN. And I'll let Barker pick up there, Adam.
Yeah, ESPN is where I was watching it. My original, I always talk about, like, what got me into wrestling was not WWE or WWF at the time. We didn't have cable, so we didn't have USA where I grew up. So I had TBS though. So I had the NWA and World Class and AWA. And World Class and AWA were both on ESPN. I probably started watching around 84. It was probably right after David died, because they talked about it all the time. Kind of unsavory looking back, because we weren't smart to the business. We now know that Fritz was could be seen as cashing in on a dead son, but we didn't know that at the time. I definitely remember
felt the tragedy, right? It was part of
yeah.
It was part of the allure of watching.
And then you see these remaining brothers, and man, like, dude, Iceman Parsons and Missing Link. And, I've talked about on the channel before, when I saw WWF for the first time after watching NWA my whole life, it just looked foreign to me. It was very clean and pretty and lit well, and World Class, as well as AWA from the Showboat, still looked like a seedy wrestling promotion. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I loved. I loved World Class. And then, probably 88, is when they really started. It was right after Lance. I remember Lance Von Erich. I remember seeing him, and he's South African, if you didn't know who Lance Von Erich was, and listening to a South African try to do a Denton, Texas accent was the first kayfabe breaking moment for me. I was like, this motherfucker's not from Texas. I know what Texas sounds like. I've been listening to Kevin Von Erich, and that's something that the movie did really well. Maybe get right into it. Kevin Von Erich was not great on the mic. Those promos do not age well. Go back.
They got right to that in the movie. Yeah, they got right to that in the movie. Matt Mullins, did you have any exposure to World Class as a young wrestling fan?
I don't think so. I think
you and I were kind of the Kerry Von Erich fans, the Texas Tornado guys.
Yeah, I think that I'm pretty sure that is my first taste of the Von Erich is through Kerry in the WWF. But
And
I love going back for sure.
And in the magazines, I'm the same way, but they would still talk about how Kerry was a part of a family. And even though I had never seen any of the other Von Erichs, even Vince acknowledged when Kerry Von Erich was coming out, part of a legendary wrestling family when the Texas Tornado was coming out. But yeah, they got right to that.
The part about that, if you know the history of World Class, Fritz kept Kerry. Kerry wanted to go to the WWE. Vince wanted Kerry so bad. He thought that Kerry was better than the Ultimate Warrior as a successor to Hogan, and Vince was really high on Kerry, really wanted Kerry, and then the accident happens and all of that. But Fritz later said he kept Kerry in Texas longer than he should have. And then, by the end of the 80s, everything's going down the toilet for almost everything other than WWF. And finally, that's when Fritz relents and says, look, I've kept you here in Texas way longer than I should have. You need to go to New York and make some money.
So how do you think that was portrayed? I mean, one of the things I thought, a lot of good things about the movie, and I know we're going to talk about some of the good and probably some of the bad, but I think overall the story was well done for Hollywood, especially. I don't watch a lot of movies, but I do know you have to expect a certain amount of dramatization. You have to expect a certain amount of story arc, and we got all of that. A ton of characters built into this movie, including the Von Erichs, but also the other family members. Kevin's wife, Pam, is a key factor in this. The younger brother, Mike, is really tells a lot of the story, too. Do you know if Mike was a musician? Do we know that? Did Mike actually play music?
Yes. I benefited from listening to the Gary Hart book. Now, the Gary Hart book, unfortunately, is out of print. And I've posted it a few times in our chat, and our chat's so spammed out with just all of our marking out that I think it's gotten lost. And I'll send it again. A lot of what Gary Hart talks about, and Gary Hart, if you read this book or I listen to it, he is quite the most boisterous man in the history of wrestling. Like if you listen to Gary Hart, he's made every human being that was famous. It was all Dusty Rhodes, dude. Dusty
he's all
Rhodes,
over this DVD special that
as
they
he
did, the
should
World
be,
Class.
as he should be.
Yeah.
Gary Hart's a great fucking mind, but a few things that he talked about in that book came out in this movie, specifically when Kevin Von Erich is going over the books and finds out that they've been shorted by the old man. Gary Hart talked about that in that book, which I thought was written X amount of years ago. There was a lot, and he specifically said that and he said that he went to, and again, Gary Hart puts himself over a lot in his book. You probably have to, take it a little bit of it with a.
Well, you can put yourself over in your own book, brother. You understand me?
That's a good Gary Hart. But he talks about him going to Fritz and actually trying to convince him that Mike is not a wrestler. And in the book specifically, he said he was a very gentle, kind, artistic musician, artist, and he talked about he took from his mom. Gary Hart was the main booker when World Class was through the roof. And he was good friends with the whole family. So yes, Mike was not an athlete, and I thought they did so well with how the brothers protected each other. And my wife said something very, very apt when we came home. She said that like brothers will get, or family, like brothers and sisters will get stronger when there's a bad parent. And I think that's what they really got over well in this movie. It's like, wow, there's so much love with these brothers. Man, I texted my brother as soon as I got out of there. Like I was all familyed out watching that movie. And you could tell that like Fritz was a domineering dickhead, Mark, and those people, that's how they survived.
Think about Fritz's short-sightedness though. And that's a telltale sign of someone who isn't a leader, right?
Ouch.
There's a difference between a manager and a leader. And what that difference is a vision. It's to see stuff that before other people are able to see. And had Fritz been a leader of his family, a leader of his boys, he would have recognized the stuff that Mike was talking about in terms of production, cable, lighting, sound. Mike's the one that played Tom Sawyer the first time Carrie heard it and became the modern day warrior and came out to Rush, and people lost their god dang minds when Carrie and those boys came out. You'll hear Kevin says they practically got raped on the way out of the back of the sportatorium into the ring by female fans.
One of the things I thought they did so well, and thank God they spent the money on the music licensing, and this is one of the things I wanted to hear Matt Mullins' take on was the music through this film. And that's one of the best montages is the modern day warrior scene, because you got Mike dropping the needle on the Rush record, and then you got Carrie out hitting the weight bench, and he hears the music and glances over his shoulder, and the next thing you know, you're in the sportatorium, and man, what a great song Modern Day Warrior is. And for those of us who know, that's definitely like what the Carrie Von Erich, or what Carrie came out to specifically. And I love that they alluded to that. Did you move seats in the theater there, Matt?
I don't know what's up with my camera. It just like, I've got this new camera that will.
It's locked on your shirt.
Well, they could have, if they were going to spring for the rights to Tom Sawyer, they could have sprung for the rights to Freebird by Leonard Skinner when they
maybe,
but
who knows?
I have to bring up, before we get into all our wrestling mark shit, my first qualm with the movie is actually a musician mark observation. When they show that scene where they go to Mike's gig, right?
The frat party.
Barker, did you notice he's singing out of a brand new Shure SM58 with a brand new mic cable and a brand new mic stand? I'm like, motherfuckers, if we're doing all this timepiece and you're getting all these cars that are within the right time period, like go get a vintage microphone. Nobody's using a brand new mic and cable. Out of here.
But man, you bring up a good point. What they did really well, though, when I saw those graphics, Steve, I was like, holy shit, that's the graphics of my youth. The member berries were raining down. The costumes were fucking dead on. Harley Race, that guy looked like Harley Race, embodied him, couldn't work a lick, obviously not an athlete. That's the problem with these movies. Do you get an actor who can't athlete, or you get an athlete that can't actor? I think that was one of the best. A24 is an excellent studio. Well, they make great movies.
So leading into the Harley Race, if we're talking wrestling mark issues, Harley Race didn't have the tattoo, did he, Adam?
Well, you pointed that out. I did not notice that. I did not pick up on it, and I don't know when Harley Race had the tattoo, but you're right.
Do you want the legal explanation for why?
Yes.
Oh, here we go.
The
Court
tattoo
is in session.
Art is not the property of Harley unless Harley licensed the art. So if I were legal counsel to A24 Studios and I were reviewing everything in that movie, there's no way in the world, unless I knew that Harley's estate had the rights to that tattoo, there's no way I'd put somebody else's art in our movie and run the risk of being sued for that tattoo being there. So
I never thought of that, but I was
music wasn't in there. The world-class music.
They mimicked it. They mimicked it, and that was a surprise to me too. And like, it was a great mimic. And I wanted to bring up the name of the guy who did the music, because it's amazing. I'm looking it up here, but I thought the music was so well done, and a couple of the songs, original music, that sounded of the era, which to me is the hardest thing in the world to accomplish. I was leaving the theater when they were playing that ending song through the thing that the band played at the party, and I look at my friend who knows music too. I was like, "Who is the song?" He goes, "Oh, I don't know." Like this, because I thought for sure it had to be some 70s era female singer that, was maybe just kind of obscure. But no, it's a modern song written and composed by the music director of this movie.
Awesome.
So, I mean, overall, I thought it was, one of the greatest wrestling films of all time.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
My initial issue would just be that Zac Efron was a little too hot doggy. He was. They
didn't nail the tan. He was more of the day 3 7-Eleven hot dog, and we needed a day 1, and he was too shredded.
Very much so. That the two biggest things I took away from just the look of everyone, Kevin, who was actually my favorite Von Erich, his flying head scissors is one of the most legendary things you could ever see. He was shredded like a basketball player, like a lean. Dude, Zach looks like goddamn Ultimate Warrior in this movie, and that took me out. That took me out of it a smidge, but that's just me because I watched that.
Zach could have played Carrie, I thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
could have played Carrie, but I don't think that you get a Kevin. You got to find. You'd have to search high and low to find a Kevin who could be the main character in the movie.
Right.
Zac Efron had the athleticism and all of, he's been from High School Musical on, Zac Efron, my daughter says, hi, Rebecca, I love you, should get an Oscar for this movie.
I agree.
But he looked more like Carrie than he looked like Kevin. And the guy who played Carrie,
too small.
Too short.
Too short
to play Carrie.
So Jeremy Allen White, who's the guy from The Bear, I think is the most common
I love him.
phrase.
Yeah, and Shameless as well.
Amazing actor. Yeah, incredible actor was Kerry Von Erich. And I know there was a lot said about that casting, but I'm here to defend it, man. I'm here to defend it.
He did a good job as acting it.
He was a great Carrie. I just think
look,
he was short.
They could have done
I got past it. I think in the context, Carrie wasn't the tallest of the three. I thought they did a good job of staggering them at least, with David being the most, I thought, beautifully cast.
Perfect.
Which
he was
Harris Dickinson. As
6'7". Look, he was perfect. He was fucking, because David was never mega shredded either. He was kind of soft bodied. He was probably the smoothest worker, definitely the best talker in the bunch. I love how they were able to get over that Kevin was always held back because, man, his promos were corny. They were American Pie and Girl Next Door, and what I mean.
As far as the height thing is concerned, I really didn't notice it as much until the Bruiser Brody scene, because Bruiser Brody I thought would be much bigger than all of them, and if you watch that scene, he's like the exact same height.
Well, that guy is a World's Strongest Man competitor. He's also on a really great show called what is the Kenny Powers Christian show on HBO?
Precious Gemstones.
Yeah, he was on the Precious Gemstones. Cool. I thought he was great.
Righteous.
Nick Nemeth actually played Gino.
He did great.
He didn't look
Ryan Nemeth.
Ryan. He didn't look like Gino, but I mean that was a hard one to get. It's hard to. What you really saw. And let's get this one out of the way because I want to get into putting this movie over because I loved it. It's hard to find people, even trained actors, to have the charisma of some of our favorite wrestlers, and that was no more apparent than the abortion of the acting job that was the Ric Flair character. It almost made me want to leave the fucking movie. It was horrendous.
Casey,
I've got it here. Aaron Dean Eisenberg is the blessed gentleman who agreed to the role, accepted it. His agent said, "You should do this.
Good try.
Play the most iconic name in the history of professional wrestling, and be prepared to be awarded for the great job you're going to do."
Well, there was no method acting, because if he'd have just watched 4 or 5 Flair DVDs and stuff on the Peacock and that 30 on 30, I don't know how a good method actor, you become that guy for 30 days while you're shooting or whatever. You turn into Ric Flair. I mean, go wrestle 60 minutes that day, drink a case of beer and a fifth of vodka, and stay out all night, and have you about 10 women, and really get into the character.
It did seem like he was kind of like wearing the robe for the first time, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Matt, tell me what Casey said, because I'm definitely interested in the wife's point of views on this, because Ric Flair, no matter what, is going to be somebody they've seen before. They recognize that name.
And Casey, in that moment, when we were talking about it, I was like, ugh. And she was like, he has to be foreign, because he sounded like he was covering up his accent to do Ric Flair. She Googled who plays Ric Flair in Iron Claw? And the first thing to come up, it says, Iron Claw movie actor defends his widely criticized performance as Ric Flair.
Dude, when he went
God
to do
bless
the,
this gentleman. Click that, please. I want to know what he said.
when he did the strut, that was offensive. His strut was offensive. They would have done better to just put a fucking blonde wig on Jay Lethal and just fucking let him do Ric Flair. It would have been more.
People would have said, "Was Ric Flair black?" Just don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. We do it all the time.
Neither was Thomas Jefferson. In
That's right.
Hamilton.
In fucking
Yeah,
Hamilton.
that's right. Yeah.
Like it was the only thing that I thought that was atrocious. I would have liked to have seen Gary Hart, but again, that's just me being a mark for the time. Let's get into this.
I want to say something about the Flair thing, if I may.
Yeah, I want to tell you what he said too.
Great. Yeah. Again, this guy doesn't have a Wikipedia page as of right now. He may have had to take it down from being Huff Manlead, as we're called in the business these days. But the script was good. I thought the wordage itself had been written in a way that was meant to be seen off the cuff, and like with him mocking the announcer's clothes. I would never be caught dead in that. I thought the wording was good, but unfortunately, the guy just didn't have the riz, as Barker likes to say, that Ric Flair did. But who does? Who could play Ric Flair?
Jay Lethal. They should have just let Jay Lethal just paint him
As we've touched on.
If we need
Or
to.
let Jay do the audio like Darth Vader.
Yes.
You know, James Earl Jones, you let Jay Lethal do the audio,
Hey,
and you let Eisenberg or somebody else come out there and mouth it.
this is also why directors want to use AI, by the way.
Yeah.
What's he say,
Shit.
Matt? What's he say?
Eisenberg explains how he approached the role, noting that he never intended for his portrayal to be an impersonation. He said that he felt there was enough Flair impersonations in circulation, and he didn't feel like mimicry would fit the film. A lot of it for me was about the stakes for the Von Erichs because of their relationship with their father and what it meant for the family to get his belt. It felt like the stakes were so high for them that my take became more of a serious thing for Flair in real life. It was a darker take on him.
Ooh, you sucked and you fucking trying to get out of it. Get out of here. Stop it. Like my wife has never watched a Ric Flair match in her fucking life. And she was like, this is really bad. Because everybody knows what Ric Flair is. He's everywhere now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah, he's back. Meanwhile, the Harley Race promo, I thought, was one of the better parts of the movie. I thought it was so perfectly shot. Nice, slow one. It's what it would have been back then, which was one slow camera cut, drawing in slowly as Harley Race delivers a very toned down and direct promo. Mentions folks like Tommy Rich, which I don't know if you guys saw on Facebook, but he made a post about going to see the Iron Claw, and old Tommy Rich must have been glowing like wildfire there in the theater.
Those shout outs are so great. You got a Jim Hellwig. You got a Jim Hellwig shout out.
That's right. And they were period perfect because Tommy Rich won the world title in 81 and held it for 4 days. And so the guys competing for the NWA World Championship at that time, the four primary guys were Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, and Tommy Rich. And all those territories, Florida wanted Dusty Rhodes to have the belt. Georgia wanted Tommy Rich to have the belt. The Carolinas wanted Ric Flair to have the belt. And St. Louis and Kansas City wanted Harley Race to have the belt. So that was all of this, tug of war and competition. And, Fritz is on the outside looking in. And you see that desire that he has to bring that world championship to Dallas.
And Harley didn't have time for any of these snot-nosed Von Erich kids.
These snot-nosed promoter kids.
Yeah,
that was something that made me wince every time Fritz talked about how important it was to have the world championship. I think that he would have got it over better with non-wrestling fans if they would have couched it as, if you have the world championship, you have the most money. So that makes it makes more sense that he was a horrendous helicopter parent and borderline abusive to his children because he was trying to get them to be financially secure. I think that would have gotten over a little bit more. We know that's what he was meaning, but I think they needed to do that for the non-marks because it made Fritz look like a fucking mark. Like, did someone not tell him that this is all predetermined?
And there's this scene, and my friend Jeff pointed this out to me, not a wrestling fan, but a really good movie critic and good movie watcher. He pointed out that, Kevin comes in, he goes, "Son, I want to talk to you. Sit down here." He goes, "Now the NWA World Championship had been taken from me, and I never achieved it." And Kevin was like actually reacting like he had never heard this before. And I'm thinking like, I feel like
around his dinner table about 4 nights a week, Fritz is telling that story.
No joke, exactly.
Like the past that some SOB dropped of his in the Texas high school state championships. He's telling, how he was, let me see, with World War II veterans in their 30s and 40s, let's put the NWA title on a guy named,
Fritz von
German.
Klaus von Brunner or something. That'll do him well. That'll pack the people in there, Fritz.
I think this is one of the most family oriented and made it as positive as they could make it. And again, I don't swing that way, but the religion that they injected into this movie, which was impossible not to have, we have a straight heaven scene at the end of the movie. It was so, and again, don't swing that way. But some of my friends do, and that's cool. I thought that it was bold, and A24 is a bold studio in a world where Disney can't make $2 in a year. A24 just keeps putting out really solid original IP, as they say in the business. And this movie has made more money than Disney did all last year, because Disney lost almost $1 billion last year and all the shit that they threw out. And I
hope it's profitable. This has got to be seen as a risk taking, right? For Hollywood to take a risk on a movie about wrestling, you know, and try as they might to say it's a family wrestling story and whatever those things they need to say, it's a wrestling movie.
You want to know who's made great money on this? I offer this with no commentary. Maxwell Jacob Friedman is an executive producer. If I had to guess, MJF probably invested anywhere from 25 to 100 grand in this movie to be an executive producer. He will get that back many times over based upon the profits of the movie.
The movie is right now. The movie right now, the last time I checked, was about 15 million in the black. And that's what A24 does. Yeah. A24 does really well with, you don't have to spend $250 million on any movie. Wow. This felt like a 70s indie movie if you've watched like Taxi Driver or something like that. Yeah. And those were low budget movies. We don't need
more like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this people got together and gave some money so that Tarantino could make Pulp Fiction and put some halfway famous people in it. John Travolta hadn't been heard of in 10 or 12 years. And then Pulp Fiction comes out, launches Samuel Jackson.
Because of MJF being a executive producer, I was surprised that they cut out his scenes, because I thought that would have been something important to touch on, especially like kind of the more heartlessness of Fritz to like, hey, we need another kid in there.
Or how desperate he was.
Yeah.
One interesting thing, there was a brother missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, I know the story on that. The writer said that they couldn't do another dead brother. They said if there was another dead brother, the movie would have not been made.
So what they did was they kind of combined Chris and Mike's stories. Mm-hmm. If you look at that character's story arc, there's a lot of blending of Chris's stuffs with Mike's, because Mike really wanted to be a wrestler, and he was never going to be, Chris really wanted to be a wrestler, and he was never going to be a size to be a pro wrestler. Even if Mike had some of the size, had zero desire to be a wrestler. And so that was one of the things that caught my daughter Rebecca off guard. Was a friend of hers who's big into movies and really was looking forward to seeing this movie, said, how do you feel about the brother that was omitted? And she's like, why didn't you tell me they omitted a brother? And I'm like, well, honey, I didn't know that I needed to tell you. Watch the documentaries with me. Chris, I understand. If you're looking at that, I love that they embraced the curse. I do love the fact that they embraced the curse, because they had to embrace the curse. 3 boys died. Hang on just a second.
3 died of suicide.
Yeah. Mike
2
took his own life in 87, Chris in 91, Carrie in 93. So in a span of 6 years, after David died in 84, in 83, 84 in Japan. The Carey match was at Texas Stadium was at 84, right?
Yeah,
probably. I got it here. I'll double check that.
So, but Kevin's on that first date, with the girl that gives him her number, very forward for the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And
84 is when he died. It was 84 when David died. Sorry.
Oh my God.
He brings up the curse. She says, what do you want to do with your life? I want to grow up. I want to be with my brothers all the time. And, he starts telling the story of the curse. And then, eventually he's having his own kids. And he's like, oh, I don't pass this curse on to my kids.
Thought that was really well portrayed.
Yeah, it was.
Zach
his depression era there, like where he's sleeping on the floor and refuses to go home. I mean, I think that was a nice touch, in this era to kind of point out, like, yeah, wow, he probably did have a really hard time with this, but also had to step up for his son and for his child, even though he was scared about it.
Yeah, and you think at Mike's funeral, you think the wife's going to leave him for, and that kind of thing, and she stuck it out. That's that's a good thing.
One of the things I thought that they got over so well in this, and I'm someone who tries to subscribe to the stoic lifestyle and stoic mindset. Some of us could be more stoic there, Steve. I think one of the problems, one of the things that we got across, I think Zach did a fucking beautiful job with. Back then, men just endured. When the dad came in, was like, take your fucking sunglasses off and I don't want to see no crying. Your fucking, your best friend and brother just died. And I don't want to see you crying.
And that's World War II mentality too, right? It's like that was a generational thing.
It's a boomer way to be. And you could see how it can be a utilitarian way to live. And then you saw how damaging it could be. Now, I think we've kind of went too far the other way these days, but I think that's something that Zach did, because there was not a lot of dialogue in this movie. My wife brought that up. There were not a lot of like soliloquies and big fucking
which I loved, actually, because I hate the monologue thing about acting.
Yeah, monologue.
I friggin' hate it. And that's the thing about Hollywood, and I just don't go to very many movies, honestly. That's why I've gone to this one. I'll go to it the 3rd time tomorrow. But I'll really invest. I'm really invested. But the thing is with Hollywood is they have to do certain things to tell the story. We should be thankful and not critical that they gave us a movie. It would have been 3 hours long, because that's how long this DVD is, where they tell the actual story.
Yeah.
And it's literally too much tragedy for Hollywood.
Yeah.
It was brutal, so man. Tragic that they couldn't even make it accurate in Hollywood. It's like too tragic for Hollywood. And I think that's the wild part of it all, is that people are complaining about this was left out, this is left out, and it's actually how it has to be. It's just the way movie making goes. It's the way filmmaking goes. I think
and as many guys as homesteaded in Texas, and the way the NWA was at that time, I mean, what are you going to are you going to show a Brody Abdullah match in the middle? Right. Brody Abdullah always drew for Fritz. He drew big houses and what have you, but you can't put a 10-minute Brody Abdullah match
right. Don't you know
of a Hollywood feature film?
And don't you know Michael P.S. Hayes knows his part should have been a lot bigger.
Boy, did you all notice that there was a glaring lack of the stars and bars during the fabulous Freebird sections of the movie? You can tell that had been scrubbed a bit.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't
they
really
should have played Leonard Skinner and had the stars and bars because it would have been period perfect.
I didn't really see it that much as a wrestling movie. I saw it as a like Shakespeare family tragedy with wrestling on the outskirts. Like I thought that something we haven't talked about. I thought that those actors, if they did most of their stunts, were working pretty damn good. I think the main guys were great in the ring, man.
And as we know,
think
Chavo
about how
Guerrero,
they had to fake Kerry's leg. That guy acting like you have a prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great
when
point.
you don't have a prosthesis.
Very great point.
That's some acting right there. And when him and Kevin locked up in the ring that first time, that was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Wow.
I cannot imagine a guy loving it so much, and keep it. You talk about kayfabe.
Yeah.
You're kayfabing that you have a leg.
And we didn't find out about that until he died.
Right.
Like, man, like these days, you can't take a shit without David Meltzer fucking finding out about it. And like to
tell me about it, boys.
No shit. Like the kayfabe of that. And I always was under the impression that it was like half of his foot. I thought like the first half of his foot was cut off like that punter from the New Orleans Saints in the 70s. But I didn't realize it was his whole leg.
Sticker, but yeah, your point's well taken. You don't know that's a below the knee amputation.
Did not know.
And Matt Mullins, the knee amputation. His prosthesis was down in a wrestling boot.
And Matt Mullins tell him the timelines are all crazy or all wrong. Matt Mullins tell him the worst timeline problem with this movie.
The worst timeline problem to me was that the day Kerry wins the belt, he gets in the motorcycle accident.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Because I think that like makes it seem like holy shit. But I mean, maybe that's why they did it too. But
again, that's another Hollywood compounding.
Yeah, we've got to put all this. We got to cram all this in there. I realize,
and it really was Kerry's drug problem that caused the NWA to take the belt off of him. The motorcycle accident came later, as Matt just pointed out.
Well, and allegedly the amputation was not their first plan, but they gave him so much pain meds and he snorted them, which they did kind of convey there that he actually ended up making the injury worse over time, and that's why they had to amputate the leg. What did you guys think about the wrestling scenes overall, though? I mean, I got chills when the movie opened with the black and white empty old school arena, and then you've got Fritz von Erich, stomping away in there. And I thought that was so well done. The modern day Warriors.
The actor that played Fritz is, crazy spot on.
Wonderful.
Agreed.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. Holt McCallany is his name. Yeah. I thought that was really well done. But the wrestling scenes, and again, with like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds standing in the ring and they're coming towards the ring, like I thought that stuff was so well done. I only cried a few times during the movie. Some of it was for tragedy, but some of it was for how beautiful that wrestling stuff was shot. Yeah. I have to give my hat off to them for making it look cool. And once again, Hollywood sometimes can do wrestling better than wrestling does wrestling.
Well, and this was a real good intro to people who are of a certain age, who cut their teeth on the Monday Night Wars. I've had a lot of people private message me who know, I'm 52 years old. I started watching wrestling in 1981 and that kind of thing. And they've asked me questions about the Iron Claw. And so for those fans who grew up from Monday Night Wars forward, watching that, it's really hard to explain the craziness of the territories at the time and all the crazy stuff that went on, and the politics and the drugs and the wild lifestyle and the rats and all of the other things, the promoters skimming, this
skimming
movie,
from his sons,
right?
God damn.
Yeah. But this movie hit on a lot of things that really were accurate for the time in the state of territory National Wrestling Alliance.
Sportatorium looked great.
Badass,
That was awesome.
man. It was awesome.
badass.
They kind of Freddie Mercury'd his drug problem. Let me expand on that. I love that Queen movie, but one of the things that it did not do is make him into the fucking gay icon that he was. And they didn't play up. They did in a Hollywood way. Dude, fucking Freddie Mercury was one of the most debauched human beings, degen motherfuckers ever. And we love him for it.
There's
they
only so
cleaned
much
him
that
up.
they can do with that and not get an X rating. I mean, I think everybody got the sense in the Queen movie when Another One Bites the Dust is there and he's in the leather assless chaps going through the gay bar. I think everybody kind of knew what was going on.
I don't know if they gave him enough flowers on that, but the thing that I think that was really lost is Kevin Von Erich was down the bad road for a long time, and it's almost like they cleaned it up. Now, this movie had an R rating, and I don't know if they cleaned it up to make sure that in the sense of the movie, his reputation was still intact. But if you've read the Ric Flair book, you will know that he was fucked up during that match. And it's another reason why Ric Flair is the greatest. He got a...
You mean Kerry?
Kerry Von Erich was completely destroyed on substances during that cage match where he won. And, you know, this was far enough back when Rick hadn't lost his mind yet. And I kind of believe him. So they didn't, when he killed himself, they didn't set it up enough for me. I think that we needed to know more about how troubled he was. If you read the Bret Hart book, he talks about being in the motel or hotel with Kerry Von Erich on many nights in 90. And I think he killed himself in 93. And he was even then and 3 years beforehand talking about, I want to go home and see my brothers.
Yep.
It's time to go. And Bret Hart talked about how he was talking him out of it, like, no. And the exact line in the book, it's such a Bret Hart line, was, you know, your brothers don't need you in the afterlife as much as your family needs you right now.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, man, this is one of the best movies I've seen since like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I cried during the movie. I thought the ending, the whole time I was like, how do you end this? How do you end unnatural?
I wondered about that too. Yeah, I wondered about that too.
Unnatural tragedy. And again, Hollywood bringing tradcore back almost, because the ending was first a heaven spot. We got a heaven spot at the end.
Yeah. And it was chilling, I thought. It was chilling.
Spoilers at the beginning of this, huh? I may record a little something.
Good call. Yeah, good call.
But
I hope they're not waiting on us to decide whether to go see the movie. They're a little late by now.
We had a beautiful reunion of the brothers in heaven. And then wonderful. The only way, and that line David has said before.
What you believe is heaven.
Well, right? I don't believe in heaven, but I believe that movie. Okay, well, let's do this. Matt Mullins, is that a heaven scene?
I believe that was a heaven scene. Yes,
Adam.
Absolutely. No, it was no question. It wasn't a dream.
I don't believe it was a heaven scene.
State your case, counselor.
All right, I believe that was a vision, like a fever dream or whatever it is. The last things that go through the human mind before your heart stops beating, or maybe after your heart stops beating and your brain synapses stop firing. That's what I thought that was.
I think if religion hadn't played heavily in this movie, I could see where you're coming from. But when Fritz said, hey, don't cry, God took David, and that was the choice that he made. This movie was so not Hollywood. There was family values and God and just family through this whole movie. And it's how they wrapped it up. And the whole time I was like, how do you end this? And that line that David said, and he said it before, I was a brother I had 5 brothers, or 5, and now I don't have any brothers. And his kids said they're going to be, dude.
Yeah.
I fucking started bawling.
Sad.
It was beautiful. It was
So
super sad.
Yeah, you knew that they had to end this movie in Hawaii.
Yeah,
You
Thank goodness
knew
they did. Yeah,
had
thank
to
God.
end this movie in Hawaii with Kevin getting his dream, right?
Yeah.
Of the
Yeah.
family all living together. Only now, and the older I get, the more I think about this kind of stuff. Kevin is in the Fritz role, right?
Mhm.
Kevin is in the Fritz role. He's the father figure, the paterfamilia, as
Yeah.
what's his name says.
Oh, brother, where art
thou?
thou?
The paterfamilia. And then you've got Marshall and Ross, in the brother role, and all the grandkids and that kind of stuff. And Kevin gets his dream. And wrestling to me will always be good guys, bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think, you can boil a lot of crap down. You really can. But the best stories are always going to be good guys versus bad guys. And the good guys don't always win. But yeah, it's nice when they do. And I don't know that Kevin won anything, but he's a survivor. And I think that Americans like survivor stories. I think that Americans like to see people like Kevin Von Erich, who overcome tragedy and are still able to manage to salvage something out of that. Kevin didn't become Fritz.
That's right. He redefined the father role for the remainder of the family and those to come after.
Yes, he did. And those are the nicest boys. I worked with them in MLW a couple of years ago. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. They treated everybody on MLW's crew, from Court Bauer and MSL,
it's cool,
right down to the Gophers going to get lunch, the exact same way. Just two of the finest young gentlemen I've ever been around.
And one of the final shots of the movie is that family photo where the kids are getting tossed in the air. You really see that. You see that Kevin's mentality is kind of reflected through that, I think. It's like, oh, we're in Hawaii now. This isn't Texas. This isn't a military family. This is not post-World War II. This is Kevin Von Erich's world now, and that I thought was a wonderful way to end it. That, and, right. Whether it's a heaven scene, and I think good film can be interpreted both ways, right? We can sit here and talk about it. And that's part of what makes this a cool movie. What were you going to say, Matt?
The heaven scene.
I know what he's going to say.
Not to nitpick it to death. However,
Matt Mullins.
If
Jack,
if David Von Erich, he has big gold, which is not the correct belt, I don't believe, that he should have. He should have the 10 pounds of gold. And then my other issue is that Kevin says that he had an older brother, that his brother died when he was 5, which would have made his brother 7 when he drowned. And that fucking kid that's a 2-year-old baby.
That's not 7. That's not a 7-year-old.
But see, wouldn't the argument be in heaven you can have any belt that you desire?
I guess.
The
big gold have the winged eagle like all of us would want.
The one Carrie wanted. You'd be like, look, I got it.
So was the Intercontinental belt accurate?
Did we see the IC belt?
I don't think we saw it, but I will say this. The Texas belt was pretty goddamn accurate. Cool. That was a dead-on replication.
How much did y'all love those scenes on the TV that were like the actual? You see Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yeah. I love it. I love that the WWF gave them the Mr. Perfect. Because was that the match that he won?
SummerSlam '90. Yeah, I think so. I believe so. Yeah.
I think
I'm so glad they gave him that.
The time's jacked up though in that timeline, but
it's very jacked up. Yeah, that's the most egregious timeline thing for me was, and when he comes home, when Kerry comes home as the star, and he's got the girl with him that nobody knows, and he gives his dad the gun. He goes, Intercontinental Champion, and your old tag team partner Hellwig's doing good too. And so, were they tag partners? Do we know? Like, was that a little bit of I know definitely Dingo Warrior went through World Class in mid.
The Dingo Warrior came from, of course, if you read Gary Hart's book, he made the Dingo Warrior.
Of course,
They were both faces. There's a good chance that they may have tagged. They didn't have the belts, if I'm not mistaken.
Your old tag partner Hellwig's doing okay. They threw that in there for us. Like nobody knows who Hellwig is.
Right.
They gave Marks a little member berries in there. You know, that Tommy Rich, I forgot about that till you said that.
Yes. Yeah.
Bill Curtis, was that his name, Steve, the announcer?
Bill Mercer.
Bill Mercer. That guy did a great job.
He did a good job.
This is a great fucking movie. I agree with Rebecca New. There should be some Oscars coming for this movie, man.
Wow, I hope so.
We have so much shit coming out of Hollywood right now. And this movie, Zac Efron was just fan-fucking-tastic. There was so much that he did that, you know, acting with your body.
Yeah.
He didn't say it, he showed it in so many ways.
Honestly, all the criticizing I'm doing is just because
you're a mark.
I wanted it to be 4.5 hours long.
You still want to be in the movie theater.
I sat through fucking Avatar, and I don't know shit about that stuff. I mean, a wrestling movie. I want to spend half my day watching.
Good stories don't have to be complicated, you know. I mean, this was really well told. Really,
and how do you tell
the way
something
that this
so
goes? This was my prediction coming out of there with Rebecca that night. My prediction was Hollywood eats itself. And if they can get their hooks into something, you know, you go back to the turn of the 20th into the 21st century, you couldn't get a Marvel or a comic book movie made except Batman by Warner Brothers, which had owned DC. You couldn't get a comic book movie made in the 90s. How many of them started, stopped, flopped, flizzled? You know, nothing happened with them, you know, and then boom, all of a sudden you've got that nice X-Men run. Iron Man comes out and redeems Robert Downey Jr., makes him a gazillionaire. If Hollywood gets the sense that this is scratching the surface of some really great behind the scenes, dude, go watch Dark Side of the Ring. Somebody in Hollywood's going to watch Dark Side of the Ring.
Well, there's already.
What happened to the Hogan movie with?
Fuck off,
Hemsworth. No, I mean it was supposed to. I know, fuck off, but I'm just saying. I thought it was getting made with Chris Hemsworth.
Well, I know this, that A24, and if any studio will do it, it's them. They're already in talks to do a Guerrero Legacy movie.
That was it, man. I was just getting ready to say you can't
do
Benoit.
So many great stories that
they've got Chavo right there as a source. He's the guy who trained these wrestlers. They worked him in as the Sheik, which I thought was a nice touch. Casting him in there and getting him in the film.
Yeah. But
the Guerrero family for sure.
The behind the scenes stories for pro wrestling in the 80s and the 90s, stuff that people remember. You know, you go back any further than they went in this movie, you know, you're getting people 10, 15, 20 years older than me. They're not going to go watch a wrestling movie at the theater. But man, you pick up in about 1980, 81, and you bring it through Hulkamania and you bring it through, you know, the Crockett's and some of the other stuff. And just
and you get that guy,
crap you get what's going on.
That guy that was in the movie Real Big Fish, that was the giant. You get him to portray Andre, and you do the Andre movie, and it's a heartfelt story.
Yeah, the Andre movie would be beautiful. I think that hopefully these kind of movies are going to start being more in because Hollywood is dying right now. Their numbers are down. We're talking 92 WCW in Hollywood right now.
They've mined the comic book vein, if you think about it. And my gripe with comic book movies is they always want to tell a friggin' origin story. Well, you know, you tried the X-Men doing the Dark Phoenix saga, and that blew up in your face. And you tried
that was unwatchable. As someone who read that comic book, that was fucking unwatchable.
All right, and the New Mutants are my favorite team, and they messed that up royally. But anyway, Hollywood's mined the comic book vein, really, if you think about it.
We're burnt.
It'll be interesting to see whether this new Batman movie or the new Joker movie actually hit. But everybody kind of feels tired of the Avengers movies and that.
And these are our superheroes, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I think that like the Joker movie doesn't feel like a superhero movie because it's not. This movie felt like 70s auteur. It felt like Taxi Driver, Dog Day Afternoon, Deer Hunter, perfect. I think that if Hollywood can do that more, I think we're ready for some more grounded shit. We do not need to see the skies open up and alien invaders, pouring into the earth and our heroes fighting them to a standstill. I think that we need more of these kind of movies coming out of Hollywood.
Ooh,
yeah, I want that.
That's got a good idea.
I want the Paul Heyman movie.
That would be a good movie.
Who would you cast?
You follow some Jewish teenager around New York who all he wants to be is close to this business,
the China Club,
in this business,
and
he's at it at the heights. And boy, he's at it at the lows where he's beating people.
Gets to be the photographer at Studio 54. I mean, that's unbelievable. His story is unbelievable.
Who do you have play modern day Paul Heyman? And then who do you have play Paul E. Dangerously?
I mean, Michael Keaton is how he got the Dangerously name because of the Johnny Dangerously movie. So that would be modern day. But then young, I have no idea.
It's got to be like Paul Giamatti or somebody, right?
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I think that Hollywood needs to go this route. We're sick of CGI. We're sick of being beaten to death with Michael.
It got me out of the house to the movies, man.
I don't know. And I'm a big movie
The only thing I go
buff.
to is Batman and Ghostbusters, and so I've probably been to about 8 movies in the last 10 years, and that's about it.
I'm a big movie buff, and I'm burned out on all this shit. It was such a breath of fresh air in the theater, and I watched it with one other. It was me and my wife and one other couple. Because I think it's probably about to be out of the theaters. And it's just, Kevin Smith said this, has the saying, I'll pay any amount of money to feel something. And I felt all the things, man. All the ups and the downs. It was like a good it was like a good fucking wrestling match.
And not to get even more
markish.
Wrestling markish. But did you see, Barker, because we haven't talked about it, that Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob now have a Major Bendy. They just came out. They signed with Cardona and Myers. Oh, God. And so Jay and Silent Bob are in the wrestling toy world now. So you're getting this crossover of Kevin Smith. So does Kevin Smith direct a wrestling movie? That's what
I tell you what Kevin Smith needed to do was not destroy the IP that was He-Man with that abortion that he just released. And the new one better. The new one better.
That. I was hoping I had high hopes for that.
Man, it was South Park. Make a gay, put a girl in it. Like that's all they did. It was a show called He-Man that was about Tila, and maybe she's gay or something. Had nothing to do with He-Man. It was fucking stupid. It was indicative of why we have shit movies coming out of Hollywood all the time. But this movie is a very high spot. See what I did there?
It. Own it.
You got to have it, man. If you're not a Mark, you got to go watch it. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you're someone who likes just the new product, this right here could be a good little history lesson. And you could be like good wrestling Mark Adam down there and go back to the Peacock network and go watch some of that world class. Cause man, that shit looked real. And
it's awesome.
As Bam Bam Bigelow said about Kevin Von Erich, that shit was stiff. And when Kevin Von Erich talks about it, he just said, yeah, we were snug. No, you all were beating the fuck out of each other. And it came across that way and it felt fucking real.
That's how their daddy taught them.
It was it was good wrestling. It's good wrestling. World Class was good wrestling. And this was a good fucking movie.
Well, at any time wrestling goes to Hollywood, I think it's a good thing for us wrestling fans. I think one thing we can learn from this, there needs to be more wrestling people in Hollywood. I think that's what we're learning from this episode. This has been real fun.
Just as long as you remember who opened the door, brother, with Thunder Lips in Rocky 3.
Man, you know what? You know what a dope ass belt would be is to have the belt that Thunder Lips had in that movie.
Did you see the story from TMZ this morning on Twitter about Hogan's?
I don't believe it. I don't believe he did it.
He saved the girl.
I
Goddamn
don't believe it.
He's
I think
a
he's
real
lying.
American hero. Don't
Like
you
during
draw
the
this for
tapings
me.
of Thunder in Paradise? Is
I think it's a
that what
work.
it is?
When I saw that, I just said work.
A teenager had flipped her car and Hogan saved her.
I
Yeah.
don't buy it. He did not do that.
That's not in kayfabe.
Crashing on you down inside.
When a car crashes down, yeah.
Oh man! Well, this episode went off the rails here quickly, but at
That's
the
all right.
end here, ultimately, more Hollywood writers in more wrestling writers in Hollywood is what we think, and less
Mhm.
Hollywood writers in wrestling. How about that? Maybe that's our next topic.
Freddie
From the
Prince,
House of
you go back
Kayfabe.
to just making movies. That's
Ladies
what
and
you do.
gentlemen, for Matt Mullins, the other Steve, and the trial chief, acknowledge him, Steve New. This is Adam Harris for the House of Kayfabe. So long from the Sunshine Shake.